At the end of the riding season, Jake sat in his garage, wiping down his bike one last time before winter storage. As he worked, he thought back on the past few months, the exhilarating twisty roads, the weekend group rides, and that one close call on a rainy highway. That moment stuck with him. He had come into a turn too hot, his tires struggling for grip on the slick pavement. He managed to recover, but it shook him. Now looking back, he asked himself, was it his speed, his line, his tires? After some reflection, he realized he had been pushing his limits without fully considering road conditions. Determined to learn from it, he made a plan for next season. Invest in better rain tires, take an advanced riding course, and be more mindful of adjusting his speed to conditions. Instead of just riding for the thrill, he'd ride smarter. By the time spring rolled around, Jake wasn't just a more confident rider, he was a better one. Looking back wasn't about regret, it was about learning and leveling up for the next season. Today, on L2R World, the motorcycle podcast, we discuss the motorcycle season that was. My crew today, Trevor Deck, motorcycle instructor of over 30 years, co-owner-operator of Too Cool Motorcycle School. To his left, Jim Pruner, writer-contributor to Webbike World. And Lancey Deck, marketing manager and co-owner of Too Cool Motorcycle School. Today's topic, the motorcycle season that was.
I don't want to sing the blues here, but it wasn't a great year for me. Typically, I ride about 20 to 25,000 kilometers a year, and not even just in Canada. Usually I'm riding somewhere else, and this year was just a total bust due to health issues. I have some neck issues with bulging discs, and I was extremely uncomfortable from about April until November, and I couldn't put in the miles. I was too uncomfortable, too distracted, and I think I racked up a total of maybe 5,000.
Compared to 25 that you normally would do.
Yeah, and I really missed out on a golden opportunity too. Once I did feel better, I had an awesome opportunity to go to Nepal and ride the new Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 in the Himalayan mountains.
You could have called me up and said, look, in my stead, we'll send Phoenix out there for you. You could have made that call.
And I mean, you were next on my list.
Oh, really?
Right there.
Oh, was I appreciate that. But was it soul-sucking?
There was some lows, yeah. I mean, there haven't been many times in my life where I legit felt so uncomfortable that I said, no, I just can't. It's not within me to go ride. I did get out, but it wasn't the same. When you're not yourself, when you're not 100%, it's not only less fun, but it's less safe.
Yeah.
Distracting, yeah.
You know, and that's what, Trevor, I'm sure you would say to your students too. Look, if you've got an injury, if you've hurt your knee, if you've hurt your ankle, if you've done something, you better think twice. As much as we think it's going to suck the soul out of us, we have to be practical, yes?
Oh, absolutely. Like anything can serve as a distraction, from a phone call, a text while you're riding, even sometimes music can be distracting to some people. But yeah, you have to stay pretty focused. But within that, once that helmet goes on, and sometimes you can break the focus, refocus on something else and come back. But definitely an injury is something that if it's always nagging you, it's just not worth it. It's like a bad relationship. It's just always in the head. You just got to clear your mind and ride. And I don't know where the stat came from, but for years, like 5,000 K, they figure is the national average for people riding a motorcycle. So you done what some people, that's the max that they do. I see some students and hear that they've gone on these massive rides, 25,000 K a year, but most of them are like, you know what, I've done 2,000 K last year, but I had a great time on the small little trips.
And maybe that's the takeaway from all of this. You know, as much as maybe it wasn't the greatest year for riding, when you got on that bike though, it was a good day.
And you got to remember, you got to remind yourself that this is awesome.
Yeah.
And you got to enjoy that moment, that 23 seconds we say in class. Just take 23 seconds and do nothing except for appreciate where you are, who you're with, and how you got there.
Was weather a factor? I found that this past year was also touch and go. Yeah, touch and go. And I wonder though, do you three force yourself on the road regardless of the weather? Hey, it's Saturday. I plan to go riding Lanchi on Saturday. I'm going to go. I don't care if the wind is blowing at 40 clicks an hour. I'm out there. Is that you?
No, I'm a safety girl.
You're a fair weather girl.
No, I actually will ride if it's cold or rainy or whatnot, but it's about a level of safety, right? So if it's like there was like 90-kilometer-hour winds at one point, and it's like one of those days I wouldn't ride in that, or if it's torrential downpour and the streets are flooding, unless I'm already out there and trying to get home and I'm close to home, I wouldn't choose to go out at that point.
Well, may I share this? That gentleman beside you there, Jim Pruner, in November, he and I were chatting. He was out riding in November in Canada, and it was cold. Now, in your defense, the weather was actually better than a typical Canadian winter. But out in November, he's riding. You're okay with that?
I passed a guy riding coming over here today, December.
No kidding.
Almost Christmas.
No kidding.
DR650 sitting out front.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, good.
What was the temperature when you were out?
What's that?
What was the temperature when you were out?
Well, I went up the Highwood Pass, and so it was about 18 at the bottom, and it was about freezing at the top, and there was snow covering the pass, and it was a little sketchy. I definitely had to slow down and trust my tires implicitly. I shouldn't complain too loud because I still did go down to Sturgis for an adventure rally, and I got to ride in the famous Black Hills of South Dakota, and they have some fantastic off-road riding there that nobody knows about. And then I started to do something new this year. We bought a Sprinter van, and I've always toyed with the idea of hauling my bike places and then riding out from there. And it allows you to have a really nice, comfortable place to sleep instead of tenting it on the ground. Right? Yeah, like I normally do. And so that was a new experience. It turned into like a nearly 9,000 kilometer trip around the U.S. And I got to also go to Utah, and I rode a new Cove motorcycle, 800X. Yeah. And I rode it up into the hills of Utah. So, I mean, the highs were really high. It's just maybe I'm spoiled rotten. And
overall, for me, I think it was all right. I mean, we have slightly different perspective in the sense that because he's doing a lot of the working and the teaching out of the lot, whereas with me normally doing paperwork and dealing with students' back end stuff. So anytime that I get to go out and ride, it's a bonus for me. Right, so this year I got a lot more riding in than I normally do during the season. Yeah. So for me, I think that's where my perspective comes in, that it was a better season for me overall.
Yeah, and as an instructor, the good and the bad. The good is you were able to train all of these wonderful students of yours. The bad, you may not have had as much time on the road as maybe you wanted.
Well, I think I had lots of time on the road. I really did.
Okay, so it was a good year for you then. What are we complaining about?
Great.
it's just me.
Yeah, it's Jim. Jim, you must leave.
And I'm warm.
Jim's the downer.
No, it's just because you care so much to students. You want them to have a good experience, and from April, May, June, it wasn't very, as far as the weather-wise, very good for them. But we ended off great. We ended up shutting down kind of normally like October, mid-October. Then we took, just like Jim, not a Sprinter van, but a Toyota, went down the States and kind of prolonged or extended our riding season down, taking a couple courses. I got to ride my son at a racetrack. Got to ride with Lanchi and my son to Big Sur, and I'm like, what am I complaining about?
So maybe is the big thing here, I know that you had some health issues, but is the big thing here is when I got out, it was great. Absolutely. And maybe that's the takeaway. When I think about a riding season that's just passed, I ask myself the question, what was that like? Will I do something? Will I upgrade my bike? Will I do different things? But then I sit back and go, you know what? It was still great that I got on the bike. Mm-hmm. And that for me makes it for me. Maybe I'm just being a little, I don't know, silly here. But at the same time, though, that's what gets me going, knowing that I can throw myself on that bike and I can take off for an hour, 2 hours, or whatever it might be. And if that's the one thing that sinks in my head for the year, I'm going to keep it until next year because I want to. It's like a drug. You want to do it again.
And he talks about selling the soul. That's what I'm talking about. If
Yeah.
you sell the bike, then what do you got? Yeah, you can go for a drive in your Corolla. Yeah, good for you. But it's just better to get onto it.
Yeah, bring on the farkles. That's and that's a real word. It means to enhance the motorcycle beyond what the manufacturer provides. So yeah, I love to do that. Even when I buy a brand new motorcycle, I usually tear it all apart and I'll upgrade even things as simple as like the radiator hoses. I like to go with a silicone line instead of the hard rubber ones that are commonly used. They're just better quality, yada yada yada.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking for a little bit more, but I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I'm my experience is the opposite. That it's real. The winter blues, motorcycle blues. I think it's connected to what is it? Seasonal affective disorder. Yeah. The one where you don't get enough sunshine or you don't get enough warmth or whatever it is. I'm affected by that. I feel like I'm a Hawaiian trapped in a Canadian's body. You know, like that's probably where I should have grown up. But but I can appreciate what you're saying. Definitely that if you go to a motorcycle show
There you go.
and you get to fondle the latest bikes and stare and talk and chat and share stories or.
But could we make the argument too? And Trevor, you can jump in on this one. Is part of what we miss is this: being able. When I see your students arrive at your location, they are geeked out not only because they're learning something that they've always been curious about, but they're geeked out because they can start sharing conversations with other people and stories, and they're hanging out, they're rubbing shoulders, they're going to Timmy's, and all of a sudden there's a community that's been created because of this motorcycle community. When the cooler, colder temperatures happen, it's almost like you're plucked away from that.
All of a sudden, the areas where people meet to talk about motorcycles are moved somewhere else or disappear, where an item like the Rock Store down in California. We went down there on a November day with my son. Lance was driving the truck with the dog. And as soon as I just pulled up, there's like maybe 8 or 9 people there because it was just early on a Friday. The weekend's the busiest. And all I heard was, well, Barry Sheen did this in this world, in the Superbike, and this guy did this. I'm like, all it was it's like motorcycle notes.
Music to your ears, eh?
It's just like, and all of a sudden, there's a track day on this day. And I'm like, what? I didn't know about that. I would have never known that there's a track day that I could go with my son without going there.
Look at that.
There's just because you're just surrounded by it.
It's a sense of community. I mean, let's be real. During the riding season, how many of these riding groups do we see? Do we hear about? And it seems like every weekend or even every week there's something during a riding season. And maybe that's part of where people will come up with the idea of, well, that's where my blues are, because then all of a sudden it disappears.
There's also the whole thing with riding is you can just, hey, do you want to go riding? Right? It's something that you can get together with a friend without having to pre-plan, way ahead of time. It's just, hey, I'm going riding. Does somebody want to go with me?
That's a good point.
Right? So it's...
You've got a buddy instantly. And then you could go to a restaurant. What's that, Trev?
Social media in these groups, hey, anybody going for a ride? Let's go. And all of a sudden,
Go to a
you might not
coffee
like
shop.
that person. Or
Yeah.
really?
And it doesn't have to be something that is so outrageous. Hey, I'm thinking about going, like 5,000 kilometer ride. Anybody want to join me? No, it could be something except for Jim. But it could be one of those things where you can just say, you know what? Hey, I'm just thinking about going to the next town, which is about an hour away. Anybody want to join me?
Yeah.
Burger, some fries.
And so during the off season, we take that away.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we continue it? I realize we can't ride, especially if the weather's inclement, but why do we stop?
Socializing?
Maybe we only like the person because of 2 wheels.
You know what? And I hope that's not the reason. I mean, we've gotten to know each other, and I like the three of you, not just because you ride and not because of your knowledge. But at the same time...
Well, I mean, look at us, though.
Look at
look at you, not those two. But I wonder sometimes if we're just afraid to branch out a little bit more and
Reach out to
You don't
people?
have to talk to anybody. You just go for a ride.
Yeah, that's true.
You can stop,
Yeah.
talk, have an ice cream, and take off. And it's the most individual group sport in the world.
Actually, that's
Well
one of the things I love about riding with the cardo units that I have in my helmet.
The mute button?
No, well, maybe my friends wish. No, but
Jim's talking to me again. Wait a minute. Okay, we're good.
no, but that really is the part of the bonding experience on a nice long ride. It's one of the things I really look forward to. Is my buddies who I like to ride the most with will go on these epic rides, and I mean. We really wish we had a transcript because it is so funny and so informative, and just the inside jokes that come out along the way.
Yeah.
I love the socializing on the bike, but I also appreciate the alone time.
Looking back wasn't about regret. It was about learning and leveling up for the next season. Thanks to Lancey Deck, Jim Pruner, and Trevor Deck. My name is Phoenix. On the next episode of L2R World, the motorcycle podcast.
I made 2 mistakes in a car that would have been probably injured or killed if I was on a motorcycle at that time.
There's more at www.l2rworld.com. Thanks for listening.